You're listening to Times Radio Breakfast. It is 22 minutes past 7. So just a few political headlines in the papers this morning. Front of the Sunday Times, BBC boss helped arrange Johnson's £800,000 loan in Downing Street. Front of the Observer, Zahawi fights for his political life after admitting tax error. I wonder if any of these things actually matter to young political voters, to young Conservative voters. Let's speak to Albie Amankona, who is Conservative political commentator with Young Voices UK. Morning, Albie.
Good morning. Also
with us is James Cowling, founder of Next Gen Tories, a group calling for the Conservative Party to shift its policy focus towards tackling the concerns of the under 45s. Morning, James.
Good morning.
I was reading a little bit earlier on that the Tory MP Simon Clarke is saying the Conservative Party is going to die if they don't manage to get younger voters. The average age that people start voting Tory is about 47. Albie, what attracts you to the Conservatives? Because you're not 47.
No, I'm not 47. I'm nearly 30, but that's nowhere near 47, thank God.
Hey, I'm nearly 47. Be careful.
Well, I hope I'm doing as well when I'm your age. But what attracts me to the Conservative Party? Well, ultimately, it's about all of these principles like, having a low tax, small state economy, personal responsibility, having a pro-family outlook, and, personal responsibility. And it seems that those principles that first attracted me to the Conservative Party when I first voted for the Tories in 2015, it was because I was grateful for gay marriage and they were talking about how they wanted to have a budget surplus by 2020. If we look at the Conservative Party today, having spent hundreds of billions of pounds over the coronavirus pandemic, the cost of living crisis, obviously two very important things, tying itself in knots over the whole issue with trans rights. And we hear there might be a rebellion about the conversion therapy. Those two things that I voted Conservative for in 2015 don't really seem to be relevant in 2023.
And James, what about the core things? I mean, you often hear, don't you, speaking to young people, the challenges are things like housing, getting on the housing ladder, owning your own home, and childcare as well.
Yeah, I think it's about reviving that Conservative vision of getting on in life, being able to buy your own home, start your own family if you want to, and have a little bit of money left over. I think that core vision is what Conservatives can and should offer to younger people. I think that's starting to break down a little bit. You can see that triple threat of high housing costs, high childcare costs, and a high burden of tax on younger people means that it acts as a barrier for people getting on in life and saving a bit more of their own money. So I think the Conservative Party needs to address those issues and prioritise them both in government and in the next manifesto so that we can deal with some of those challenges that are blocking people from feeling the financial benefits from voting Conservative.
I just wonder, in light of the headlines this morning, does that matter to young people? I mean, Albie, to you, when you see things about Nadhim Zahawi, when you see things about this loan to Boris Johnson and the fact that it was kind of brokered by somebody who then was given an appointment as BBC chairman, does that matter to young people? Or actually, is that a distraction? And what James has just talked about is what really matters?
I think it is a little bit of a distraction for young people, because I think for a lot of young people, we don't necessarily remember what it was like under any other government other than a Conservative government. So there's this idea that maybe this is just what governments are like. And perhaps those young people who are tired of hearing about the stories of sleaze and the scandals that seem to be attached with, this current Conservative administration might be attracted to the Labour Party because they're saying we won't have any of this. So it's certainly not helpful that we're seeing these stories about Nadhim Zahawi coming out today, but I don't think they are the main concerns that young people have. I think James is absolutely right to say, the major concerns that young people have are around housing, they're around university, they're around childcare, perhaps a little bit earlier, but they're also around perhaps these more softer, more cultural issues that the Conservatives don't seem to be able to have an answer to in a satisfactory way.
So what should they be doing, in your view, Albie?
Well, I think the Conservative Party needs to be talking a lot more about what it's already doing. If we talk about some of those cultural issues, I think when it comes to this entire culture which the Conservative Party and indeed the Labour Party have been perpetuating, the way it looks to younger people is they find it very difficult to engage with younger people. They're either willfully irritating younger people by the stances they take on some things. For example, when we're talking about conversion therapy, or they make a race report and it says that there's no institutional racism in Britain, or they just don't know how to communicate with young people properly. And actually, the Tory party is doing some very good things in both of these areas. It's pressing ahead with the Inclusive Britain strategy. No one's talking about that. There's a £750,000 grant which is available for the 75th Windrush Day celebrations, which are happening this June. No one's talking about it. Instead, we're just talking about these Partygate issues and these issues going on at the moment with Nazim Zahawi, rather than actually talking about the things that we're doing well.
James, do you think that these headlines, these bad headlines that have been out, and I forgot to mention earlier, of course, Rishi Sunak and his seatbelt. I mean, do young people see that as a problem for the Conservative Party, or is it the distraction?
I think it is a distraction. I think ultimately when people get to a general election, they look at their own lives and the experience that they're having and wonder whether they're getting on in life and whether they're feeling the benefits of the current government. I think that's the check that most people have for whether they want the government to continue or not. So I think the government should be ruthlessly focused on providing better opportunities for those younger people. There's a more important point that it's not just about this being good for young people and that winning over votes. It's about many of the productivity challenges we have are due to challenges around housing, childcare, and the cost of living. For example, just to take housing, if you're having a huge sector not building enough homes, that's one, going to knock your productivity. But two, if you're having younger people living further out, that's a less productive way of using their time. If you have higher density in cities, you get the economic benefits of building those homes and those people living in those cities, living closer to their jobs, and providing more to the economy. It's true of childcare as well. With childcare, the Centre for Progressive Policy estimates that there are over 1 million young women who have children who aren't taking on extra hours because of poor childcare. So if you provide a better system of childcare, you're going to see those productivity benefits with people, if they choose to, taking on more work. And that's one of the big challenges we have at the moment of a large number of people who aren't working, who could be working. So some of these policies are both good for winning over young people, but also good for the health of the economy.
And also plenty of women who would like to work and just simply cannot afford it because either they can't get the childcare or it's too expensive. I just wonder as well, to talk a little bit about, sometimes people feel that, pensioners do very well out of a Conservative government. The pensions triple lock has been restored. Come April, there's going to be an increase of over 10% for pensioners. Do you feel that you're never going to get the Conservative Party to change while the majority of their voters are older voters? They are going to target policies towards securing those older voters. Or do you think they just have to face the reality that that's not going to sustain them as a party or a government? What do you think, Albie?
But tomorrow's older voters are today's younger voters. And I think the concern to the Conservative Party should be that one day those older voters that are perhaps carrying the majority of their vote today are going to die. And in 20 or 30 years' time, if you've done absolutely nothing to nourish the younger voters of today, they're not going to vote for you in 20 or 30 years' time. So when Simon Clarke talks about the fact that if the Conservative Party doesn't attract younger voters, the Conservative Party is going to die, that will absolutely happen. If we look at the polling rates of the Conservative Party in the younger age cohorts, 25 to 29 and 18 to 25, we're talking single digits in some cases. I think the Green Party polls better than the Conservative Party in that particular age group. So it's of paramount importance to anyone who is interested in centre-right politics and the future of the Conservative Party in the United Kingdom to figure out a way for the Conservative Party to appeal to younger voters.
Finally, James, do you think the Conservative Party understands the gravity of this situation?
No, I don't. I think many in government do understand this, and we've got up to 40 MPs that we've spoken to are supportive of our agenda. But the risk is that we always say, tomorrow we'll deal with this. We've got more pressing issues to deal with right now. We've got to appeal to our existing voter base. And the problem with tomorrow is that it never comes. So now is the time to deal with these issues. We've got just under 2 years away from the next election. So prioritising some of these things now and showing results, particularly around childcare and the cost of living, which you can do in a short space of time, is a good way for the government to show to people below the age of 45, actually, we care about these people and we do need to have a policy agenda. But it also, as I said, unlocks some of those productivity challenges around people in work and the cost of living and things like that. So it's a win-win for the government to act now, and it needs to feel a sense of urgency in doing so.
Really interesting to speak to both of you. Thank you for your time today.
Thanks so much. Good to speak to you.
Yeah, heard there from James Cowling, founder of Next Gen Tories, a group calling for the Conservative Party to shift its policy focus towards tackling concerns of the under 45s. And also we heard from Albie Amankona, who is a Conservative political commentator with Young Voices UK.